So the Dancing Blade of Rana is one of my new favorite weapons from the DLC, with a fantastic scaling and the ability to just Beyblade your way through the entire game, taking minimal damage while outputting an absolute crap ton of damage. This weapon is a ton of fun. We are going to be looking at every single aspect of this build, buffs, talismans, flask, everything you need in order to make this build your own. And I'm going to give you a few varieties of different talismans to use because I found that in certain situations you needed to switch up the talismans in order to optimize this build for the certain situation you find yourself in. So without further ado, sit back, relax, hit that subscribe button, and let's go ahead and get into it. Now first and foremost, as you can see, we are literally shredding through every single boss that is presented here within this footage. Everything you're seeing has been recorded on New Game Plus 2. I am a level 150, and this is a straight up dexterity build. Now even though we're going to be primarily focusing on the unending dance Ash of War for the Dancing Blade of Rana, that isn't the best aspect of this weapon. In fact, this weapon is a curved sword, which, you guessed it, means you can absolutely abuse this game with jump attacks if you desire to do that. I decided not to because I find jump attack builds incredibly boring. However, I can't argue with how amazing they are, so if you want to throw on the Raptor's Black Feathers and the Claw Talisman with this, it will work exponentially well, and you will be able to shred through bosses almost easier than what you're seeing now. The main thing you're going to need to watch out for when using this build is finding those windows of opportunity in which you can use Unending Dance. Unending Dance is the Ash of War that is going to allow you to pretty much do the Ash of War until your stamina bar runs out. So, the more stamina you have, the longer you can stay in your Unending Dance, dealing a ton of damage. So in order to use it at its maximum effectiveness, you are going to be using it against small and medium-sized enemies to stun lock them in order for you to continue using the dance. Other than that, you need to find your windows of opportunities, as you can see in this footage, against these bigger bosses in order to get a good amount of damage off very quickly and then back off. So when looking at the actual weapon, you are going to have the Unending Dance Ash of War. The physical damage isn't going to be that great, but you attack so fast that the physical damage stacks up pretty quick. You are going to have a dexterity scaling of A, so the more dex you have, the higher physical damage you're going to get, and its attributes required are pretty low at 9 strength and 20 dexterity. Now you are going to find this within the Southern Nameless Mausoleum right here on the map within Shadow of the Erd Tree after defeating the Dancer of Rana. Now as far as your Flask of Wondrous Physic, there are a few options that you can use, but overall I landed on one that I think benefits this build very well and the playstyle that I'm using. So for our first tier, we're using the Leaden Hard tier. Now this is going to temporarily increase your poise, and the reason we want to increase our poise is to stay in our dance longer. Having more poise with this build is going to allow you not to get staggered or knocked out of it as quickly, and I have noticed that against some of the bigger bosses, this helps out really well. Our second tier, of course, is going to be the Thorny Crack tier, which is going to increase our successive attack power by 20%, and this helps immensely to spike our damage, especially with all the different movesets of the Curved Swords and our Ash of War we're using. Now, these three tiers are also really awesome for this build if you don't want to use the Leaden Hard tier. The Crimson Sapping tier is going to allow you to get health back on hit, the Greenspill Crystal tier is going to give you more stamina to stay in your dance longer, and the Blood Sucking Crack tier is just going to allow you to do more damage, so all three of these work incredibly well. Now, the Leaden Hard tier is going to be found by killing the Ulcerated Tree Spirit in Mount Gelmir, located right here on the map, and the Thorny Crack tier is going to be in the Consecrated Snowfields in the top right after you defeat this Erd Tree Avatar located right here. Now, as far as your talismans go for the build, 3 are standard and 1 can be interchanged, and I will give you 3 separate options for that 4th slot. But first off, we're using the Shard of Alexander, allowing us to get a 15% increase in our skill damage. In talisman slot number 2, we have Millicent's Prosthesis, which is going to give us an 11% increase in our successive attacks, plus 5 dexterity. For our 3rd talisman, we're going to have the Rotwing Sword Insignia, which is going to allow us to get a 13% increased attack power boost on successive attacks. And I will break right here and say that if you don't have a New Game Plus build and you're only on the first playthrough, you can't have both of those talismans. So out of the 2, I would choose Millicent's Prosthesis, and then for the 3rd one, you can do a Damage Negation Talisman, or maybe the Two-Headed Turtle Talisman for another optimal talisman. Now in slot number 4, right now I have the Godskin Swaddling Cloth. This is going to go really well with the Crimson Sapping tier if you're using that to get some extra healing back on your hits. I really enjoy using this setup right here if I'm going against random mobs and just running through the lands between or the DLC. But if you're going against bosses, I like to use the Bullgoat's Talisman here, or as I've said before, you can use the Claw Talisman to get some extra jump attack damage. Now in order to find each one of these talismans, the Shard of Alexander is actually going to be located at the end of Alexander's questline, and I will leave that video down in the description below so you can check it out in case you do need a step-by-step on how to find that. The Millicent's Prosthesis and the Rotwing Sword Insignia are both quest rewards from Millicent's questline, And once again, I will leave a video in the description below so you guys can follow along step by step and grab those. And then as far as the Godskin Swaddling Cloth, that's going to be found in the Spirit Caller Cave right here on the map after you defeat the 2 Godskin bosses at the end. The Bullgoat Talisman is going to be found in the Dragonbarrow Cave right here on the map within Caelid. And the Claw Talisman is going to be found within Stormveil Castle after you climb one of the ramparts. Now when it comes to the buffs of the build, I am using Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow. However, the Golden Vow that I'm using is going to be on an Ash of War on a dagger. This is a really nice way to get a few extra points in damage negation as well as some physical damage. However, this type of Golden Vow is going to give you less damage and damage negation than if you were using the incantation. This particular Ash of War is going to give you 11.5% physical damage and 7.5% all damage negation, but if you use the Golden Vow incantation, you'll be getting a 15% increased damage boost as well as a 10% to all damage negation. So with the Flame Grant Me Strength and Golden Vow Ash of War, you're going to be getting a 31.5% increase in your physical damage, a 7.5% increase to your damage negation, and an 11.1% increase in your stamina recovery. And the very last thing before we get into our stats is going to be what armor we are wearing. I am wearing the Rakshasa armor set, which you can get from a mausoleum located right here on the map within the DLC. The fight is an absolute bear, but once you get through it, you'll be able to wear this armor set constantly and you're never going to want to take it off. Now the reason this set is so good is because each armor piece is going to give you a 2% damage buff, meaning by the time you put all the pieces on, you're going to get an 8% increase overall damage, and since it's pretty much free damage, you can't argue with that. And the very last thing we need to go over is the stats of the build. As I said at the beginning, I'm level 150. We have 60 vigor because the DLC requires anywhere from 55 to 60 vigor not to get 2-shot completely. Our mind is at 18 because we don't really need it. Endurance is at 28 so we can stay in our dance longer and wear our armor. Our strength is at 16 because we don't need it. Dexterity is at 75, 70 without Millicent's prosthesis. Intelligence is at 7 because we don't need it. Faith is at 19 just for that Flame Grant Me Strength. And our Arcane is at 11. And guys, that is going to be it for our Deadly Dancer build using the Blade of Rana. As you can see, the blade absolutely shreds. The weapon is a ton of fun and it has the opportunity to completely trivialize the game. So before you guys leave, I want you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the bell notifications so you guys can know when I'm making more content. I do have a top 5 dexterity builds video coming on Fridays, so definitely make sure you stay tuned for that. And until next time, guys, stay safe, enjoy the game, and I'll see you in the next one.